What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Ice the Kicker. My name is Glen alongside, as always, Matt Ferrara. Week 13 in the books in the NFL, and if we learned anything from Week 13 is that we do not know anything about football, and there's no point to us doing this podcast. And if you stop listening to us, we don't blame you because everything we said that might happen didn't happen. Who would have thought that the Giants would have beat the Seahawks? Who would have thought that the Redskins would beat the Steelers? It was just an absolute mess in the NFC East this week because, the whole year, the last 3 months, we've been hearing the NFC East is garbage. They don't deserve a playoff team. They're going to go 6-10 is going to win the division. Matt, that's not true anymore. Now it's a real fight for the end of the division. And it might take the 7-8 wins that you would normally see, one of those kind of quasi-divisional wins that you would normally see in a normal year, to win that division instead of like a 5-11, 6-10. So the Giants beat the Seahawks. Nobody saw that coming. Colt McCoy under center beats Russell Wilson. And there's a lot of things to talk about in that game about not only the Giants and how well their defense was and how good their running game was, but also how bad the Seahawks offense was and how bad Russell Wilson looked. So we can talk about that. And then we can talk about the Steelers game, all that went down with the play call and, Tomlin's decisions not to go for it on a 4th and goal and not to just take the points. And then there's the Eagles and their situation. Hurts is finally starter. And then there's the Cowboys, who seem to be the team in the NFC East that's completely bottoming out and that have no shot at winning the division after getting dismantled by the Baltimore Ravens yesterday. So you can go first and which team you want to start with, any of the four, because we can go forever about any of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get right into the Giants, like you said, and the NFC East. Like, there was a stat that not one NFC East team beat a team that had an above 500 record, and then the Giants come in with their backup Colt McCoy, and they handle Seattle pretty well, and then you have Washington get the biggest win with the team that is undefeated. So I mean, we could stay on the Giants first, and again, we've been saying for a while that their defense is legit. Like they are definitely a top conference leading defense or even NFL leading defense. And then it's inspiring because now you basically have to just as the years progress, just build that offense up. Keep the defense intact the best way you can financially, and then just build up that offense any way you can. And then you're going to have a potentially Super Bowl caliber team, not just playoffs, not just NFC East, Super Bowl caliber in my eyes.
Yeah, the defense has really stepped up. They've kept the Giants in every single game this whole season, except for the 49ers game. That was a complete disaster. I think that was week 3. They got destroyed by a 49ers team that had nobody on the field because everyone was either hurt or had COVID or whatever it was. But other than that, the Giants defense, especially over this last 4-game winning streak, has been, as you said, top in the NFC, one of the top defenses in the NFC. And that goes to guys like a Logan Ryan or Bradbury or Blake Martinez. All these guys are contributing. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. I don't think I can name, off the top of my head who the edge rushers are on the Giants, but they're getting to Russell Wilson and their secondaries played well. So they're playing together as a cohesive unit and they have a lot of confidence. And, they shut down Russell Wilson. And we talked about it last week. Russell Wilson seems like he was running away with the MVP award through the first 4 or 5 weeks. That's really not the case anymore. The Giants defense, they've played well. There's no taking anything away from that. But you're still Russell Wilson, and you're still one of the top quarterbacks in the league. And to only score 12 points against the Giants, that's a big red flag to me in terms of the Seahawks, a team that we both said in week 1 we expected to go to the Super Bowl. If you're Seattle, you got to panic a little bit because all of a sudden your offense has hit a complete wall.
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of look at this and like you said, like you score or you let up, say, 15 points or 17 points to the Giants, and you couldn't get a win with your offense. It is slightly alarming, I guess we could say, but I think I want to lean more on the side of that the Giants defense is just that good. Like they're absolutely just that legit. And then like you were talking about their edge rushers before. I mean, you look at Leonard Williams, who was a guy that they traded for, and then they gave him the franchise tag that was like $17 million. And I was the first person I was like, oh, that's a shit ton of money. It's not worth it. Now he's going to be 26 years old. He's about to cash out right now. Like he's about to get an extension from the Giants. I would assume that's going to be 3-4 years, and he's going to be looking at 17 plus, 18 plus million a year. So he's earned it. And now this is where the GM and Gettleman has to step up and understand that, hey, listen, like, what am I going to do? Because this defense is legit and this defense is winning us games right now. But how am I going to tackle this financially? Because, again, you don't want to end up like the Eagles, as we've seen with Wentz, and just throw money, all of it, into one person. You have to kind of game plan for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, stuff like that. All right, look at the draft. Maybe there's a bunch of good edge rushers in the draft that, hey, maybe I don't need to sign him, stuff like that. But I mean, just like, and going with, back to Seattle, we kind of said they were pretenders again a little bit as the weeks progressed these past few weeks, and they keep solidifying it for us that this team is not a team that I don't think is going to have much success in the playoffs at all, let alone going on a run to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about Leonard Williams because it completely slipped my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Rushers on the Giants, not good on my part, but I digress. Yeah, he was great. I mean, he was kind of casted aside by the Jets, and the Giants bring him in, and something just clicks. Now, you can say that's something on the Giants, you can say that's something on the Jets. I'm sure everyone has an opinion, but it all starts in football, both offensively and defensively, on the line. And both the offensive line and the defensive line for the Giants has been really good in recent weeks. Mm-hmm. They won a game with Colt McCoy as their starting quarterback. And I was watching this game and I was thinking to myself, wow, Eli Manning played every single game ever, right, in his career, like, other than getting benched for Geno and then eventually getting, benched for Daniel Jones that kind of ended Eli's career. We saw Eli every single day, and now we're seeing someone who's not Eli Manning or Daniel Jones and Colt McCoy, and in a big game that they needed to win for playoff implications. So that was the first time I was like not happy with who their quarterback was in terms of a game that they needed to win. And the Giants offensive line stepped up. Wayne Gallman, Alfred Morris, they were able to run up and down Seattle's defense. On the defensive side, Russell Wilson was running for his life the entire game, and the Seahawks running game wasn't able to get going at all. So the Giants, their lines have been this area of concern for so many years. And as of right now, the last month or so, they've really stepped up in a big way. And that's why they're in first place in the division.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, you shout out Morris and Gallman, 190 rushing yards for the Giants. And again, that's without Saquon. And we don't need to get into that because we both have our feelings there. We can touch upon that on a later date. But giving credit where credit's due, it starts with the line, definitely. And then you have the running backs who can hit the holes. I mean, 190 rushing yards, that's borderline elite. And then you look at, holding Seattle and Russell Wilson to only 216 passing yards. Like, that's pretty awesome to do right there. Like you said, Seattle only scored 12 points, and 2 of those were off the block punt safety anyway. I mean, they stripped Russell Wilson or someone else. They had a fumble recovered, and then Russell Wilson threw a pick too. So, I mean, you make him turn the ball over twice. That's something that Russell Wilson doesn't really do too much, that the Giants and their whole team is kind of letting them do. And then, like you said, it definitely starts with the D-line, but also it's nice to see that the contracts that you're paying to Bradbury, and then you brought in and traded for Jabril, and then Xavier McKinney, who are the more the coverage guys, and Logan Ryan are now, they're doing their part, and they're allowing they're covering the wide receivers a little bit longer to allow the D line to pursue the quarterback. So they both kind of are working cohesive, and that's what you like to see. Nothing is worse than when you say, oh, we have this awesome defensive line, but then your cornerbacks can't cover, because that's kind of what you're seeing in Dallas, and then vice versa and stuff like that. So they have a pretty complete defense right now, and you got to be excited as a Giants fan.
And what's really exciting to watch as a Giants fan in terms of their defense is no superstar on the Giants defense. They don't have a Khalil Mack. They don't have a JJ Watt. They don't have, an Alvin Kamara. They don't have, he's whatever.
I get what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know why I said that. Anyway, they don't have that top flight corner. They don't have that top flight pass rusher, but they're all playing well. I can't believe I said Alvin. I'm out of it today. It hasn't been my day today, so I apologize for that. But they don't have that big superstar defensive player, and they're still playing so well. And I think that's a testament to Joe Judge. I think Joe Judge has come in, and their players, maybe they're very young and they're very inexperienced in terms of winning football games. They've bought into the system that Joe Judge is preaching to them, and it's shown. And, if they sneak into the playoffs and they finish 7-9, 8-8, this is a real good foundation for what Joe Judge and what Dave Gettleman and what John Mara want for the next 5 to 10 years with this team. This is not like the finished product of the Giants, but this is a really, really good start. And I'm sure you can relate to this as a Dolphin fan. This is not the finished product of the Dolphins, but the Giants, if you asked me which team in the division, the NFC East, is better set up for long-term success, it would probably be the Giants. Even if they lose the division to Washington, Alex Smith probably isn't the long-term answer in Washington, and neither is Dwayne Haskins, it seems. So they have questions to answer. Philadelphia, we don't know who their quarterback's going to be anymore. Yeah. And then Dallas, they have to sign Dak to that massive extension, and they were far from a perfect team when he was healthy and playing. So in terms of the future, even if the Giants don't win the division here, and obviously I'd like them to as a Giants fan, setting up for the next 10 years, this team probably has the brightest future in the division.
Yeah, I mean, even breaking that down a little more, I mean, just say who would I kind of put the most stock in or bet in going into next year? It would be the New York Giants, like without a doubt. I mean, like you said, Washington, you have Alex Smith, and again, he's doing fine. But is he your long-term goal? Is he even your quarterback next year? No idea. So they might draft a guy. Dallas is going to have to figure out some way to get the money for Dak, because they're already paying guys. Who are they paying? Like a couple of their linemen. They're obviously paying Zeke. They're paying was it Lawrence on their D line, something like that. Whatever, but either way, they're paying a ton of guys already, and then you already saw the collateral damage that they lost Byron Jones to the Dolphins because they couldn't afford him, and now their defensive backs are terrible. And like you were saying, kind of circling back to the Giants, they have a team that doesn't really have any superstars, but statistically, you have guys who are stepping up, and you have guys who are playing equally, if not better, than certain other superstars, and that kind of goes into a debate that a lot of people have and fans have, and specifically coaches, is this culture versus kind of overall skill. Like a lot of times you want to just get good players, but if there's no culture to buy into, and if they don't gel well together and they don't have good leaders from the coaches, then kind of what's the point? Like you're not really getting the most out of those players in my mind. So I would choose that culture 10 times out of 10 over, all right, well, we have a superstar, but it does nothing if he's not kind of led the right way.
Yeah, and you see it all the time in New England, where Joe Judge is from. Was under Bill Belichick and his staff. Like Bill Belichick will take Chris Hogan and turn him into a stud receiver. And he never had, like Tom Brady never had, other than Randy Moss for 2 or 3 years, that stud number one, because the culture of the Patriots was you're going to do your job. That was their motto. And you're going to just play well. And that's what they did. Yeah. And now Joe Judge has brought that over to the Giants. And it's really been the first time we've seen one of Bill Belichick's disciples leave the Patriots and to be a head coach and really succeed. And succeed.
Don't forget about Brian Flores. He's a Patriots guy too.
Yeah, Brian Flores as well. I mean, Matt Patricia got fired.
Yeah, failure.
Eric Mangini never worked out. You go down the list, but Joe Judge, despite the early season struggle going 0-5, and despite Brian Flores, getting a new quarterback, a rookie quarterback, and getting him acclimated to the NFL, they've really been successful. And I think both organizations are in pretty good hands with young quarterbacks or with young head coaches. And that begs the question, as we, shift away from the NFC East for a second, because this is just where this is going in my head. Yeah. When Adam Gase gets fired from the Jets, because they just fired the defensive coordinator because of that cover zero on the last play of the game, which was ridiculous. Would it be better, because we're hearing rumblings about Bill Cowher coming out of the TV booth to go coach the Jets? Is that the best idea, instead of trying to find the next, Sean McVay, Brian Flores, Joe Judge kind of guy?
Yeah, I mean, it's the good part about the older kind of guys is that you kind of know what you're getting. The way I see it is you're basically spending, I consider, equivalent to getting a guy in free agency. You know what you're getting. You're going to have to spend a little more, and it is what it is, where as getting this new, say, a coordinator to make him a head coach, stuff like that, like a Joe Judge, like a Flores, you're basically drafting a guy. It's a little more risky and stuff like that. But I think the reward is there tenfold, just because, I mean, Coward hasn't coached in 16 years and the game's changed. And I know people want to talk about, oh, well, John Gruden does it. I'm not really sold on Gruden anyway, to be honest. Like, the Raiders are a very hot and cold team. And I think with the Jets and kind of their situation right now, I would take a chance on a younger guy, because I don't really see a Bill Coward or even really a Harbaugh and like coming in and laying the law down and really being that perfect fit. And like, basically you're saying that this guy's too good to fail just because of his age and his experience. And I don't think that's the case right now, to be honest, with the Jets. So I would rather go maybe like, again, the Chiefs offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, either go, trying to think who else. Or, I mean, honestly, we kind of talked about Dabo Swinney, but someone who hasn't been a head coach yet in the NFL. I think I would go that route.
And the only problem with that when it comes to the Jets is that they got to get it right. Like, they have to get it. If they go someone like a coordinator who's never been a head coach before and it's not the right decision, you're not only blowing Sam Darnold's career with Adam Gase, then you're going to blow Trevor Lawrence's career with whoever you bring in next. So that's tough. The Jets are in a really tough spot, or who they decide. I understand why they would want a guy like Cowher, obviously Super Bowl champion, Hall of Fame head coach, the whole thing.
It's safer, yeah.
It's a safe bet. But for the Jets and how, their roster is and how desperate they are to have a successful football team, wouldn't the safer bet be the better decision?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I just feel like say you get a guy like Coward, and all right, say you go 8 wins, maybe you go 9 wins max, but you may make the playoffs, you may not. It's like, that's not what you're going after. Like, I feel like they're in a situation where they're so desperate that they should want to take a risk, like you were saying, basically. Like, I like, safe to me right now, Adam Gase was a safer pickup. He was a former head coach. He spent 3 or 4 years with the Dolphins, and he figured, hey, he's got some experience. Maybe he'll figure it out in New York, and he didn't. So they tried to do the safe route, and that kind of blew up in their face. So now try to maybe find a riskier guy, but in that terms, it basically means just someone who's younger, doesn't have that experience. And that's something that people joke about all the time, is that, like, when me and you are looking for jobs and people are saying, oh, you need 10 years experience. We're like, oh, well, we're 23, 24 years old. How are we going to get experience if we don't get a job first, if you get what I mean? So kind of the same thought process. And I hate that people use that against new aspiring head coaches, even just people in general in life with jobs and stuff. It's like, oh, well, you don't have the experience. Well, it's like, well, maybe give me a chance and then you'll be my experience. You kind of got to go through it together. So
yeah, we've really been seeing over the last 2 years, the new guys coming in, the young head coaches really doing well. I mean, McVay went to a Super Bowl. 49ers head coach went to a Super Bowl, right? I mean, obviously Andy Reid's the older statement, and he won the Super Bowl, and he has Patrick Mahomes, and he's kind of the outlier. But I think that's the way the NFL is going now. The younger kind of guy that was a coordinator, kind of inexperienced, because then the organization gets to mold the team after what he wants. And that's what's happening in New York and in Miami. So we're going to swing back to the NFC East. A coach that might be fired at the end of the year is Doug Peterson, because we talk about it time and time again on the show. It seems to be a weekly segment talking about the Eagles and what they're going to do. They finally pulled the plug on Carson Wentz. And we watched the Packers-Eagles game. I was flipping back and forth between that and the Giants, because obviously both games were important in terms of the NFC East landscape. It was ugly watching Carson Wentz play football. Like, it seems to get worse and worse every single game. And Doug Peterson couldn't deny it anymore. And he puts in Jalen Hurts. And as I feel like everyone expected, Jalen Hurts didn't come back and win the football game, but he did provide the Eagles some sort of a spark. So now Jalen Hurts is going to start this week. Is it too little too late for the Eagles and Doug Peterson, or does Jalen Hurts now have an opportunity to get the Eagles back in the division?
No, I mean, I think they definitely have a chance to climb back in the division, just because they still have that tie, which is, again, if they end up kind of creeping up a little bit, that's going to be what's going to get them over the hump, potentially over a Washington or the Giants. I think they have the potential to. Will they? I don't think so. But going back to also what you asked, I think this 100% saves Peterson's job. I think if he stuck with Wentz throughout the whole season and they didn't make it, even if they did make the playoffs but had like say 5 or 6 wins, that wasn't doing you anything, because any other year you're not making the playoffs and you're honestly a top 10 draft pick. So and he had a comment I saw on Twitter. It was kind of like infuriating because he was like, oh, like he got asked basically, how are you going to like help Jalen Hurts out? And they were like, oh, well, we're going to try to get him going in the screen game, establish the run, do some quicker passes, just kind of get him acclimated to everything. And it makes you wonder, it's like if Carson Wentz was struggling so much doing what they were doing, why didn't they change the game plan for him? I know he's not a rookie, and I know they kind of expected more, but that to me seemed like a bonehead move by a coach, and then basically didn't put Wentz into a situation to be successful. I mean, you have to know the limitations of not obviously Carson Wentz, because he's a very good football player, but just of your team. Like if you don't have guys who can burn it down the field, why are we sending them on go routes every single play, if you get what I mean? So
Yeah.
He's clicking all the buttons right now and saying all the right things, Peterson, to keep his job. But I do still think that the Eagles management has a pretty interesting decision, because now that you do have a new coach, new quarterback, maybe you want a new coach to kind of groom him.
Yeah, I wonder if this is I can see them bringing back Peterson, especially if Hurts plays well and gives the Eagles some sort of, relevancy down the stretch and they win a couple games, even if they don't make the playoffs. If Hurts does semi well, I can see Peterson be back. The question now is Wentz, because Wentz was terrible in Green Bay.
Yeah.
And reports before the game were like his confidence is shot, and his confidence was shot the second they took Hurts. And they said they wouldn't admit that, but Jay Glazer said that's basically what happened. And my response to that is, I mean, come on, you're a professional athlete. Like your feelings can't get hurt that easily that they took a quarterback in the second round. So that's something that Wentz has to deal with and has to answer for. And if I'm a fan of the Eagles, I don't want my quarterback being someone with thin skin, because the quarterback is probably the most, sought after and most criticized athlete in sports, is the starting quarterback of an NFL team. More than a goalie, more than a starting pitcher, the quarterback is the franchise is the organization for any of these NFL teams. And if mine gets his feelings hurt because they had the audacity to draft another guy, then you're not the guy.
Yeah,
I mean, we can talk about Carson Wentz and what he did 4 years ago and how great it was and how much money they owe him. But at the end of the day, playing well is one thing, but having the mental capacity to put away any distractions is another. And right now, Wentz isn't doing either.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and it was awesome that you said that the quarterback is probably the most criticized position. They go through the most scrutiny on a day-to-day basis, and that's with anything, more than even LeBron with the Lakers. I mean, it's crazy to see what even the quarterback on the worst team in football, it's like they're still going and getting grilled every single day and getting grilled in the media. So it is a tough job, but like you said, it is their job. And you look at Aaron Rodgers, they drafted Jordan Love in the first round. So clearly Matt LaFleur has some kind of reservations to see what life's going to be like without Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers is saying, hell no, that ain't happening. I'm going to be an MVP right this year. So for him to be upset over it, I think is soft. Like Rodgers kind of came out and he said, yeah, like it shocked me a little bit. And then he said after a couple days, he's like, I'm going to do my thing. And it seems like Wentz really has been affected by it. And then that kind of shows the person that he is in a sense, from a competitive standpoint, that obviously this is a sink or swim kind of situation. And then he's sunk a little bit. And it's nice to see that Jalen Hurts is getting his opportunity right now. I mean, friggin' finally. If they did it maybe a couple weeks earlier, maybe they would have actually made the playoffs. But like you said, you need guys who are willing to compete. You have to. And that just kind of goes to what we've been talking about a lot, especially with the quarterback position. Like, I'm not a big fan of, all right, here's one guy, and then just this is your city, this is your team, this is your franchise. Like, no, like if you see an opportunity to get another quarterback, and I grilled all my friends that are Jets fans, I grilled them prior to this draft. I was like, hey, like, would you take a quarterback in the first or second round? No, we got Darnold. Well, look at now. And then I remember right when Philly took Jalen Hurts in the second round, people like, really? We did that? We did that? I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm like, it makes sense. Even if Wentz, it was your guy, this exact situation is why you always got to prepare basically for the worst. You never know. And then at the most important position in the history of sports, why would you not want insurance plans there? Or why would you not want internal competition to make sure you're getting the best out of whoever is going to win that job? That's just the way I look at it.
And there's definitely different situations for that. Like,
Of
for example,
course.
if you have an older quarterback, then it makes more sense to draft a quarterback. Like, it was made
Mhm.
sense for the Giants to draft Daniel Jones, despite what you
When,
think of
yeah.
Daniel Jones,
Mhm.
especially at the time, if he was the right guy to pick at 6. It was right
Mhm.
for the Giants to take a quarterback with Eli Manning at 38 years old. It was
100%.
it made more sense for the Packers to take Love at with Rodgers at 37 years old than it is now to take Hurts at with Wentz being what 28. How old's Carson
Yeah.
Wentz?
And I can look it up. And also right after getting his contract.
Yeah, but people need to understand that this is a business, and loyalty is important in sports, I guess,
Hmm.
but not at the not at the expense of winning football games. Like if somebody thinks that Jalen Hurts is going to do a better job winning Philadelphia Eagle games than Carson Wentz is, then you got to pull the plug and you got to
Yeah.
draft Jalen Hurts and you have to bench Carson Wentz. And it's a tough business. It's a tough thing to do. And you're gonna piss the quarterback off, but that happens and you got to move on.
Yeah.
Alex Smith, it's happened to twice.
Hmm.
He was on the 49ers and he got benched for Kaepernick when he got hurt, never played again. And then he got benched for Mahomes in Kansas City, went on to Washington, happened to him 3 times. And then
Yeah.
he got benched for Haskins and now he's back.
Yeah.
So like this is the way it is in the NFL, especially
Yeah.
at the quarterback level. Somebody's going to be gunning for your job at all times and it should never be safe.
Yeah. I
Unless
mean,
you're Patrick Mahomes, unless you're Tom Brady or Ben
yeah.
Roethlisberger. But
Mhm.
there's going to be a point in time in all of those careers where it's going to happen to them.
Yeah, and again, that's just life. There's always going to be someone kind of younger, and like you said, someone coming for your job, and that to me is the best thing about sports, and that brings out the best in people. Like I kind of use this analogy just like with coaching, just baseball, and I think about all right, if I go work out alone, I can get a good workout in. Like you tell me to go, I'll go run. I'm gonna go run, touch the pole, and come back, do a sprint, whatever. It'll be good just because I'm pushing myself, but if a coach says, hey, Matt and Glenn, go run and sprint to touch that pole, now we're competing against each other. You're going to get a little more out of each other. That's just complete human nature because now we're competing to see, all right, who's going to be better, who's going to be better, who's going to be faster here. It's the same thing in football. You need competition, especially when you have these younger guys. Like you have these younger players. Like you need to get every ounce of potential out of them. And the only way to do that to me is obviously good coaching, but with good coaching are people who bring in competition. And I think, again, this move for the Eagles could save the franchise because imagine they didn't have Hurts and they had to go through Wentz this year, then they had to go through Wentz the next year, and then maybe Wentz the year after that. And if things trend how they look like they're trending with Wentz, you'd be like, holy shit, like this is the worst franchise ever. Like they went
Yeah.
from Super Bowl winners to what 4, 5, 6 straight years it would have been of just mediocrity. So
Yeah.
this could be one of the most important and honestly one of the best GM decisions in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're definitely faster than me, so you'll definitely win that race to the pole. So, but I'm still going to try, and my feelings aren't going to get hurt. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So, Carson Wentz, it's a lost year for him. He needs to do some real soul searching during
Yeah.
the summer because he's not going anywhere.
No,
Nobody's taking that. Nobody's taking that money from Philadelphia. So it's either Carson Wentz, gets his act together, gets his ass out of bed and works hard and becomes a better football player through the offseason.
Yeah.
Or he's going to be the highest paid backup quarterback ever, and that's going to be his legacy. So he's come to a crossroads in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the Washington football team.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun. Broke my heart. I was so angry.
Yeah.
Because the Giants won, and it was a game that the Giants, I didn't think they'd win. I don't think anyone thought they'd win.
Not with Colt McCoy.
I think it was I saw on SportsCenter it was like a 14% chance that the Giants had to win that game, and they did. Mm-hmm. So I was like, they won the game. I don't know if you felt like this, but I felt like this. I was like, the division's over. The Giants won the NFC East. Like that was kind of like my that's kind of like how I thought for a second,
Yeah.
because I was like,
Mhm.
Dallas isn't winning any more games, and Philadelphia is a train wreck. So, and then Washington's playing Pittsburgh, who's undefeated. There's no
Mhm.
way. And
Yeah.
then, obviously it doesn't work out for me. And Washington wins. And now the Giants and the football team are tied with 4 games to go. Giants have the tiebreaker due to beating them twice.
Mhm.
It's just a shocking game in terms of how it went down. Pittsburgh went up to a 14-0 lead. There was that whole clock controversy at the end of the half that gave Washington those 3 points, and
Yeah.
then they mounted the comeback in the second half. We talked last week about the Steelers and how they were getting disrespected because they were 11-0 and nobody really thought of them as championship teams. And
Mhm.
those people that are championship team, and then the people who were saying that last week kind of were proven right, because a lot of flaws on this Pittsburgh team to lose to Washington, especially after being up by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, everything we seem to say, it goes the opposite. We were
Mm-hmm.
giving the Steelers so much credit, saying everyone who said they're frauds is wrong, and then they come out and they again. I know Washington earned it a little bit, but I mean, offensively, it only put up 17 points. I mean, there something weird was going on there. Like Chase Claypool, one of your better offensive players, probably your best wide receiver, was on the field for like 10, 11 plays. So like I don't know if maybe that was an injury thing or what it was, but they just couldn't get anything going. And then obviously the Steelers have kind of done a little bit of it or changed their scheme a little bit where it's a lot more quick passes, get the ball out of Roethlisberger's hands, which then kind of sets up the pump fake and go that he seems to do every 5 plays. But Washington just wasn't biting on anything. I think every single drive, it seemed like they would get 2 yards, 2 yards. Then it would be like a 3rd and 6, and then maybe to get the first down, or maybe they wouldn't, and they would just complete a pass like right before the sticks. It was just a very kind of eye-opening game, I think, for a lot of fans. And obviously, the question remains: all right, who's winning the Super Bowl now, the Chiefs or the Steelers? And I think it's the Chiefs unanimously.
Yeah, and the Chiefs have, I'm pretty sure, I don't know how the tiebreakers look. We're going to look at the simulator, so we'll see in 2
Yeah.
seconds. I'm sure that I think the Chiefs got the 1 seed at this point now with the
No,
loss.
I think there's still 2 technically because
Really?
it goes to because it goes to conference wins.
Okay.
And the Chiefs lost it to the Raiders, who's in the AFC, and the Steelers lost it to Washington,
Okay.
who's the NFC.
Yeah, but regardless,
It's
what
close.
we learned in this game is that the Steelers aren't perfect. Obviously,
Hmm.
they just lost, and they lost their
Yeah.
first game of the year, and they have a lot of things that they need to, I guess, tie up before they get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Losing to Washington, I feel, for Pittsburgh, might be a blessing in disguise, because they kind of were
Mhm.
riding high a little bit. If you wanted to lose, get it out of the way now with 4 weeks left in the regular season. Figure out why you lost to Washington, which is a team that you shouldn't be losing to, especially at
Mhm.
home, and move on. I think one of the big reasons why I think New England lost that 16-0 season to the Giants in the Super Bowl is because, as crazy it might sound, they didn't lose in the regular season. I think
Yeah.
sometimes you need to lose the battle to win the war. And I think
Mhm.
if anybody is going to turn the Steelers around, they don't need to do a full 180. I mean, they were
Yeah.
11-0. They're 11-1
Yeah.
now. They're going to be fine. They're going to win the division, all that. Mike Tomlin's going to figure it out. Mike Tomlin's
Yeah.
going to figure out what's wrong with this team right now, and they're going to adjust. So I think this loss can actually be a good thing for Pittsburgh. Obviously, a great thing for Washington, got them right back into the division. But I still think the people who are canceling the Steelers, the people who the last few weeks have said this is the worst undefeated team of all time,
Mhm.
I still think that's a little that's a
Yeah.
little far. That's a little dramatic. I think this is a really good Pittsburgh team. Do I think they're better than Kansas City? No, I don't. But
Mhm.
I don't think this is Pittsburgh's going to fall off a ledge now, because they're too good.
Yeah. And what's going to be good for them to see, all right, what are they made out of? Face a little adversity. You lost to Washington at home, like you said. All right, now you have to go and play the Bills in Buffalo. So that'll be a really good game for them
Mm-hmm.
to and see what they're made of. I mean, they're playing Sunday, so they're the Sunday night game. That's a huge game for both teams because then they play the Bengals, which we're going to assume that's a win, and they play the Colts and Browns, who are 2 very good teams and playoff teams right now. So the Steelers kind of final 4 games here of the back end of the season are pretty hard. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you have 3 out of those 4 games are against playoff teams, so you're really gonna have to show out, or else you may see the Browns maybe even sweep in and take the division. How crazy would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I hope not, because that means the Browns would beat the Giants, which I don't want happening.
Yeah,
That game got flexed
I saw that.
amazingly. So
Yeah,
it's gonna be the first time the Giants are in Sunday night since week 2 of 2018. So that's nice.
awesome.
But yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh, they definitely have some flaws that they need to figure out. But again, I don't think this is the end of the world for them. They still got
No,
the quarterback, they still got the head coach. But you're
defense
right.
is still awesome.
The
Yeah,
they play the Bills, right? They play the Browns, they play Indiana. Those are all teams you're going to see in November.
in the
If you
play.
want
Yeah,
to, if you want to get to the Super Bowl, you have to beat at least two of the, like one or two of those teams, and then beat Kansas City.
yeah.
So it's a good litmus test for Pittsburgh. On Washington's side, just a little rapid fire.
Hmm.
What do you think? How do you think this division plays out? Do you think that this Washington win kind of catapults them as the favorite, or do you still think the Giants with the tiebreaker are the favorite?
I mean, I still want to say I want to lean towards the Giants, but then again, it's like you look at, all right. So Washington's got the Niners, they got the Seahawks, who the Giants just beat, obviously. Then you have Carolina and the Eagles. It's like they don't really have the hardest last four
Yeah.
games either. So
I mean, they can win those games, but they could also lose those games. Like, I wouldn't be shocked either
yeah,
way.
no, they're not easy games, but they're not hard games either. I mean, and that's kind of the same thing with the Giants. Like I could foresee both teams kind of going 2-2. Who they
Yeah.
beat, I don't know, but just you kind of see both teams going 2-2, and then obviously, like you said, the Giants have the tiebreaker.
The Giants have Arizona, Cleveland,
Ravens,
Baltimore, and then Dallas.
Dallas.
So both these schedules, they're hard, but also I wouldn't be surprised if they won those games. So
Yeah,
going down, it's going down to the wire, and this is good for football.
This is what you want. Yeah.
Because if if Washington would have lost, then the Giants could have just backed their way in. They could have gone 1-3 and probably still wouldn't have won the division. Now the Giants and the Giants and Washington, and you can still talk about the Eagles if you want to. Dallas is not winning anything. They got to win. They got to win these games. So it's going to force these NFC East teams that everyone was making fun of early in the year to be competitive.
100%. Absolutely 100%. Like you said, someone's going to have to earn it. Like no one, it's not going to be given to anybody. You're not going to see a team go 6-10 and then win the division. You're going to have a team going in there, they're going to earn it, and they're going to be going to the playoffs with some steam. And I mean, you could say if you face a Giants team that ends up 8-8, meaning they won 6 of their last 7 games or whatever it mathematically makes sense there. That's a team that I probably don't want to play first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play Giants or Washington in the first rounds. After what they just did, beating Seattle and Pittsburgh, nobody thought they'd win those games. So I don't think I wouldn't be wise if the Buccaneers or the Rams or whoever it ends up being overlooks the NFC East team. I think that's a really dangerous thing because we've seen it before. We saw the Seahawks do it to the Saints with that Marshawn Lynch game. We've seen it. Like it's happened before.
I'm with you.
Let's go to the Dolphins. Took them a little bit. Took them a little bit to get going. They had to, I guess, ease themselves into it, but they got the job done, and that's all you can ask for at this point. 8-3, really pushing for that one of the wild card spots. The division is still there. It's on the outside looking in for the division, but you'll take the wild card. Of course, you'd want the home game, but you'll take the wild card. And they took another step forward in that this week.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the first half they were down 7-6. It was like, oh my God, what's going on with the offense? People are like, oh, are we benching 2 again? Are we going with Fitz? And luckily Flores came out and was like, that was never a thought in my mind. Dolphins Twitter is just the most toxic thing right now because we're not used to success and now we're seeing a little bit of it. But
you're like, what do I do with this? I don't know.
Yeah, and we were talking to Stick just before we hopped on here, and the first half they really couldn't get anything going, and it wasn't even necessarily Tua's fault. Like the run game wasn't really doing too well. Luckily, our defense is really good, and they forced a pick in that first half, which was awesome. But what was really interesting to see is obviously everybody kind of saw the fights and stuff like that. So you had Xavier Howard, he got kicked out in the second quarter, and then in the either start of the fourth or end of the third, you had 2 of their wide receivers get thrown out too. One of them being Devontae Parker, our best wide receiver. So it was like, holy shit, who the hell is going to be playing football? And to see them really not miss a beat was pretty awesome to see. I mean, the third quarter alone, Tua was like 11 for 13 for like 135 yards and a touchdown. That's just in one quarter. And you space that out throughout a whole game. Like that's a good enough whole game. So you're seeing him progress, and you're seeing him get comfortable not only with his teammates, but you're seeing him get comfortable with the offensive coordinator. And the biggest thing I think with his success was they ran a lot of no huddle and a lot of spread empty sets, so no running back, like kind of 4 or 5 receiver set. And he did what he did at Alabama, just dissected the play quickly, get it out of his hands quick, and then let the guys kind of do the work for you. Like, you don't always need that insane like bomb scramble out play, because those plays a lot of times don't work out in your favor. Those are usually a 5-10 yard sack or a pick. So it was awesome to see them adjust. And obviously defensively too, I know it's the Bengals, I get that, but good teams got to beat bad teams. It's just part of it. They held the Bengals to under 200 yards, 196 yards, which anytime you do that is awesome. Only 7 points, and 70 of those yards were on one play. It was on one long touchdown to Tyler Boyd. And then you had picked off the Bengals twice, and then you had 6 sacks. So I mean, anytime you do that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. And it's awesome to see that. And similar with the Giants, that your offense doesn't need to go out there and score you 40 points or even 30 points. Like you can have the belief that, hey, even if we're down, say 10, odds are that's the only 10 the other team is getting the whole game, because our defense is that good and they can keep us in games. So it's very, very similar with the Giants and the Dolphins, that they're playing complementary football. And if one phase is kind of faltering a little bit, the other 2 phases are going to help them out.
I think you got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. And they missed an opportunity a few weeks ago. Who they lose? Denver. They lost to Denver, and that was a blow, right? That kind of put them. Bit, yeah. That kind of put the division on hold for a little bit. And that kind of put Buffalo in like the driver's seat for the AFC East, but it did knock them out of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. It's good growth for the Dolphins that they are able to beat a team like the Bengals. It's nothing to write home about. The Bengals are a bad team. They lost Burrow for the entire year. Kind of, pretty good timing for the Dolphins and the Giants, both of them, that Burrow ended up unfortunately getting hurt when they were about to play them. But, a win's a win. And that is a win that the Dolphins didn't get 2 weeks ago when they should have. So that's something that, should be taken as some sort of, reward for the constant week-by-week improvement of the Dolphins. And I think the Giants and Dolphins are very similar organizations in terms of what we're expecting from them. Yeah. Obviously, the Dolphins are 8-4, and they could have a double-digit win season, and that's something that every team signs up for. And when you're in the double digits, like, you're expecting more in January than what I guess the Giants would be this year. But, they're both in year, I guess, 1 of this brand new era of football. And the next 5 years for both these franchises are going to be better than this year, hopefully. Mm-hmm. So I think both of them, this whole season for both of these teams are learning experiences, regardless of whether they make the playoffs or win a playoff game or not.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, and we kind of talked about our expectations for our teams and kind of managing them. And it's weird because now that we're seeing success, we have a tendency to then keep raising our expectations, which sometimes is good, but sometimes you have to back yourself down a little bit, because, all right, like going into the season, I thought the Dolphins were, no doubt, I said they should be an 8-8 team. They already have those 8 wins. You easily could lose 4 games. And honestly, it wouldn't even be anything to like kind of hang your head on, because you're playing 4 really good teams. I mean, obviously no one wants to end the season losing 4 games, but the teams you're playing are all in that playoff hunt. I mean, you play the Bills, you're playing the Chiefs, you're playing the Raiders, and then you're playing the Patriots, who defensively right now are showing that, hey, they're no joke either. So they're
hanging around. They're not done.
That's what 100% too. So the AFC East was a little bit of not a pipe dream, but it was almost in our grasp in a sense. But I think it's slowly slipping away. But who knows? You're going to have to either shock the world against the Chiefs, or you're probably going to have to go at least 3-1 the rest of the way, and you're going to need a lot of help from the Bills to lose to get that to get the AFC East. But that's not really, again, that wasn't really in my expectation this year. But now that it is kind of close, I still have to not be, we didn't win the AFC. It's like, shit, we suck. Like, no, you have to understand how the whole season progressed. And that's stuff we can talk about once the season ends. But hopefully the season continues on for both of us, both of our teams, a little longer than just the 16 games were promised.
Yeah, and the Dolphins, they got hurt by the Ravens winning. That could have helped if Dallas would have found a way to win that game. Obviously, the Colts are still in that kind of wild card situation, and as are the other teams blanking on me.
Well, I mean, I'll real quick, I'll get into that. So literally, this was probably the worst week I've ever had watching football, because now you unfortunately have to start rooting for other teams to do bad, and you start looking, all right, I need this team to lose, I need this team to lose. And then literally the Raiders won on that last second heave, which sucked. And you could have had a nice 2-game cushion. I mean, the Ravens won 2. That sucked for us. Even more specifically, the Titans beating the Browns would have been a little bit better for us, but that didn't matter as much. The Texans literally had the ball on like the 3-yard line, and then they were up 6 and they botched the snap to Indy. So that easily could have been a win. That would have been absolutely monumental for us. So literally everything, and then obviously the Bills won as well. So everything we needed to happen to help us, nothing was guaranteed, didn't happen. So this was like a very shitty experience as a Dolphin fan right now, because it seems like even though we went 1-0 on the week, it felt like we went 1-4, 1-5.
Yeah, and we're back at the playoff machine, which really segues perfectly into what you were just saying, just how things have, percolated since week 13. Because when we did week 13 last week, everything was wrong, right? So we have to completely restart what we're doing here. So right now, it would be Buffalo, Miami in the 3-6, and then the Giants would be playing at home against Seattle, who they just beat, at 4-5. So let's run through this again, because why not at this point?
Yeah.
The Patriots, who we said are not done, let's give them.
Not at all.
Oh, that's a tough game against the Rams too. This can go either way.
That'll be a really good game there.
Let's give it to the Rams, the home team. This is not happening for you. I'm sorry. This game, I don't think this game matters. I know Dallas is still somewhat in, but we'll just give it to them.
You're more.
I trust Dalton more than whoever's under center for Cincinnati.
Easily.
We're gonna go to this later. The Bears need that game. This doesn't matter. Let's say Tampa wins that. This is a big game. We'll hold off this for a second. This is going to be the Jets are going to lose. Chargers and Falcons. Let's give it to the Falcons. This is Saints-Eagles. Saints are going to win this. Green Bay is going to beat Detroit. We'll save this for later. Let's say we can save this for later as well. And then this is another good one. So here we got a few major matchups that will determine playoff implications. So we got Giants-Cardinals. We have Indy, Vegas. We have Washington, San Francisco. We have Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and we have Baltimore, Cleveland. Which one catches your eye first?
I think that Pitt Buffalo game. I think because that those are two, obviously, of the top dogs in the AFC. That one really stands out to me.
Because if Buffalo wins, then you're panicking if you're Pittsburgh, because that's 2 straight losses. Everyone's going to be like, what's going on? You also lose the 1 seed.
Yeah, you're losing that bye.
And then you go to the 2, and then look at you right there.
Yeah.
That would be nice. So let's do that. And then Cleveland, let's say they gain another game, right? Because even though Baltimore beat Dallas, they're still far from, out of the woods in terms of, what they've gone through this season. So all of a sudden that gives Cleveland 10-3 to 11-2. That changes everything. Now it's a race. Here we got Indianapolis in the 6th seed right now. Give it to Oakland, that changes. So that determines one of the wild cards here.
So I don't know. My screen, I don't know if it is on yours. It isn't. I see your mouse moving, but it's you're clicking over. I'm assuming the teams, but on the screen, like the sharing thing, it's not like updating. Like it's not showing us live. But I can see your mouse moving. I don't know why
nothing's changing?
No, like I kind of could guess where your mouse was going and where the teams are.
Oh, that's lame.
A little bit, yeah. I was getting lucky.
Well, then I guess it's not working. I don't want to do that to you. It's working on mine. So I'll try to
Yeah, I don't
do
know.
this through. I'll try to be as specific as I can. So I gave
That's fine.
Vegas the win,
Yeah.
and that gave them the 6th seed
Hmm.
against the 3 seed, which would be Buffalo. Let's see. Let's say Washington beats San Francisco, Giants lose to Arizona, and then all of a sudden that gives Washington. I mean, it's getting more and more clear. We'll just do week 14 this week because I don't want to go into
That's fine.
15,
Yeah.
16, 17. But yeah, there's so many games that, one game changes the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, at least I
Like,
know for the
if
AFC side.
I have right here, Matt, if Minnesota beats Tampa,
Yeah.
Tampa's out of the playoffs altogether,
That's crazy.
which would be crazy.
That's absurd. And that's something that we wrote them in as a 2nd seed.
Yeah. And if the Giants would beat Arizona, then that put Tampa Bay in the 7th seed. But if the Arizona wins, beats the Giants, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose to Minnesota, then they're out.
Yeah, I mean, on the AFC side, I know like 7 out of the 8 teams that are kind of in contention all play each other this week alone. So you're going to see a ton of shakeup. And it's going to be really, really interesting, and it's exciting because now this is where stuff matters. This is where you start having to, like I said, you have to root for teams to lose, and you got to see, maybe do I get help here? Am I not getting help here? And it's just it really is tough, and you have to handle obviously your own business first.
That's the most important thing. You got to win the games on your schedule. You can't, if you're relying on other people to get you into the playoffs, then you don't deserve it.
And that's something that's a good point too that I was kind of thinking about, and obviously dealing with myself as a Dolphin fan is like, as much as I need all this help and I want all this help, it's like if we win the games we're supposed to, and say we finish 3-1 and we don't make it, it's like we did what we needed to do. We just didn't get the help from the other teams. I can live with that. Yeah. But what I can't live with is if everything, because this has happened before, if we get to week 17 and everything we need to happen happens, and then we don't handle our own game, I would be pissed. That's the worst case scenario right there.
It's December football. It's the best month for football.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, starting tomorrow, we're going to see a whole bunch of action that's going to determine who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. We're going to
you gotta get to the Jets real quick.
Yes, the Jets.
Yes, just the whole
firing the coach. I mean, Greg Williams firing Greg Williams. I remember watching it live, and people are forgetting they had the touchdown to play before as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had, I forget who it was on the post, and then obviously they had the one down the sideline on the cover 0. But like, what do you think? I think I texted you and Garrett immediately. I'm like, what play call is that defensively? And then like some people, it was so bad that people speculated that they did it on purpose to lose intentionally.
And again, that is me to a T right there. Like that is 100% a we're tanking play call, and obviously that wasn't what it was because Greg Williams obviously lost his job. But it's like I even like, and Gay said, he's like, I wish I would have like kind of called timeout and said, hey, like this is what we're doing. And like you had Marcus May who was like, listen, like I know the coach is going to call his game, but he's like, you got to help us out. And Adam Schefter posted something, and he talked about that specific play against the Raiders, and it says there were 252 pass plays meeting the criteria in the last 15 seasons. The criteria being final 15 seconds of the game, down 4 to 8 points, and then 40 plus yards to the end zone. So they were the first defense to send 6+ pass rushers in this situation. I mean, just an absolute bonehead play.
But you know what? Greg Williams, it's his fault. He made the call, and he got
100%.
fired, and he deserved to be fired.
100%.
There's how many other people on the sideline? There's like up to 70 people on the side. Not one of them can call a timeout. Nobody on the defense can call a timeout and say, hey, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. Like, were they just blindly, they have this blind faith in Greg Williams that they didn't call a timeout and be like, are you sure that's what you want them to do? Like, if you're playing baseball, right? Mm-hmm. And you get, let's say you get a bunt sign and you're like, really? And you're going to call time. You're going to go up to your coach and like, are you sure you want me to bunt? Like, that's kind of the situation that I thought that they were in. Yeah. Like, no, there was no cooler head that prevailed. And you know what? It's on Gase too. They say he's like the offensive guy, but you're the head coach. You oversee everything. You're not the offensive coordinator. So he hears the play in the headset as the head coach. He knows what play is coming. How can you not call the timeout? Everybody knew that play was stupid.
I mean, and I know Dan Orlovsky put up a little thing and said, like, this is just what Greg Williams does in those situations. He likes to bring the house. And, like, listen, I get that. Obviously, you're hoping for a right away instant sack there. But you have to factor in, all right, who are the wide receivers that the Raiders have? And you have Henry Ruggs, who's one of the fastest guys. So basically he's running a 40-yard dash. He's going to beat the cornerback. And you also had a couple younger rookie cornerbacks. And it's like it made no sense, but it's kind of funny when you think about it because, all right, you fired Greg Williams basically after this bonehead play. Adam Gase has been doing terrible the whole year, but you keep him. So it's very confusing. And again, it keeps kind of putting us in the same position where it's like, I think Joe Douglas like really loves Adam Gase, because if you're firing Greg Williams for his poor performance, how have you not fired Adam Gase? Like,
It
when
makes
you really
sense.
think about it.
It makes sense not to fire him 8 weeks ago in terms of like you want to make sure they get the 1 seed.
Mhm.
But in a couple weeks, if like let's say the Jets keep losing, let's say the Jaguars win a game,
Mhm.
and it's like for sure you're getting Lawrence, like
Oh,
you gotta let him
like,
go before week 17. Like the
Yeah.
Giants did it with McAdoo. Like the
Mhm.
Giants weren't going anywhere. Everybody knew McAdoo was gone, and they got rid of him, I think, in week 15. Like you got to do something similar because
Yeah.
at some point you're insulting your fan base, and that's not what you
Yeah.
want to do, because one day, this will all be over and we're going to be
Mhm.
back allowed in MetLife Stadium again. And
Mhm.
what Jet fan is renewing their season tickets if Gase comes back? I wouldn't.
No, I mean, again, the only person putting asses in seats is going to be Trevor Lawrence, but
Yeah.
it's not going to be
But if
in year
Adam Gase
two.
is the coach for Trevor Lawrence, then what
You're not
hope does
winning
Trevor
games, yeah.
Lawrence has? Like Trevor Lawrence is not a slam dunk, automatic, I'm saving the franchise guy if Adam
Mhm.
Gase is still there.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's almost we're almost pushing on the brink of it's unfair, the expectations we're putting on Trevor Lawrence, and obviously he's probably the most sought after.
And he might go back to school. Who knows?
Yeah, he's the most sought after college prospect that we've really seen since like Andrew Luck. But now we're putting these expectations on him to literally save the New York Jets franchise, and it's borderline almost going to be unfair for the situation that he's put in, especially if he has Adam Gase at the reins still.
He has to be fired immediately, and I think he will get fired. I don't know why Douglas is waiting until end of
I think he's waiting for that 1 seed.
I think you just gotta, if Jets lose the Seahawks and the Jaguars win, whoever they're playing, the Titans, if they beat the Titans and it's a 2-game lead for Trevor,
Mm-hmm.
I think the seat gets hotter for Adam Gase, but just a nightmare.
I'm with you.
And who knows who they're gonna pick.
Mm-hmm.
But they have an opportunity with Lawrence, and if they get it right, they can make this a quick turnaround. This is not a 5-year rebuild if they do it correctly. They got a ton of cap space.
Mm-hmm.
They got, obviously they're going to have top 5, top 2 pick in the draft. It's not completely over. Obviously, the Bills and Dolphins seem like they're moving up to the upper echelon, and looks like the Patriots are going to take a step back, but that won't be forever because
Mm-hmm.
they'll eventually figure it out. But it's not a black hole of nothing for the Jets in terms of their success in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can work out.
I agree there.
Before we end, 2 things I want to talk to you about. One, I saw in your Snap story that it was 2 years
Miami
ago.
Miracle.
Miami Miracle. So I want to get your thoughts on 2 years later. And I wanted to quickly talk about the Odell Beckham comments about the Giants.
Yes. Good.
So let's do Miami Miracle first.
Well,
you want to reminisce?
Yeah. So I mean,
go ahead.
So basically, you're down. I think you're down like 2. You're down like 34, 30, or something like that. Whatever it was, you're down. You're at the 30-yard line, your own 30. So you're 70 yards away from the touchdown. And Bill Belichick decides to put Rob Gronkowski out as basically a deep safety in case there was like a tip deep ball or something like that. Stupid, because Ryan Tannehill cannot throw the ball 75 yards. I don't really think anyone really can. So blunder right there, number one. They run this play. They throw it to Kenny Stills, who kind of does like a 20-yard in route, who then flips it to Devontae Parker, who's coming down the sideline, who then flips it to Kenyon Drake. It looked like it got a little blown up there because it looked like Kenyon Drake was trying to pass it to somebody else too, but he ends up kind of running around, and then obviously the famous line is like Gronkowski doesn't have the angle, and then you just see Kenny Drake just sneak in. You see Gronkowski kind of stumble and dive, and I remember watching that, and my first thought was like, you're
There's
waiting.
a flag.
Yes, you're waiting for that yellow animation to pop up, and then there wasn't. I'm really getting chills talking about it. Then there wasn't, and then I erupted. That was the craziest experience I've ever had as a fan. And then again, that's including the Yankees winning the World Series, but just because that specific moment was absurd. I mean,
that's so unexpected. Nobody saw
it. Never
coming.
happens. Obviously you're beating the Patriots. The only unfortunate part about it is that it didn't mean anything because I mean,
were they in it at the time?
No, not really. They didn't do anything. It was just like a nice moral victory. I guess it's always nice being the Patriots, but yeah, like, and then 2 years later, I mean, I honestly think there's probably
has anything come close in the 2 years since?
Like as far as Dolphin stuff,
anything, literally anything that's ever happened.
No, that level of kind of like I was excited obviously when Tua got drafted, but like I it's different now. I mean, I'm trying to think.
The
like
Tua draft was a fun Instagram live to be a part of.
Yeah, that was fun, but that was just like that was more like sigh of relief, excitement. Like thank God we just drafted him. But I'm trying to think like even Yankee wise, like playoff stuff, like nothing really crazy. Like the only thing I can even compare the Miami Miracle to, or for whatever reason, like Raul Ibanez that one game.
That was a good one. Yeah.
But I mean, again, like I said, 2 years later, I think there's maybe one or two players who are still on the team. So I mean, we've changed drastically since that moment.
It's still a fun memory to have. I remember.
Awesome,
I have a funny memory about that game. I watched it happen, and then my phone rang. I had a friend that was in Miami at the time at the game. Oh
my God, that's awesome!
So I watched that. I watched it happen. The touchdown. As you said, I'm waiting for the graphic to say flag.
Yeah,
because
flag.
Like there's always a hold.
Yeah,
somebody's always holding on that kind of play. Like I remember a couple weeks ago, Rutgers did like a 30 lateral.
Yes, yeah, and then
there was a flag and he got rid of it. I was expecting that kind of thing. So there was no flag and they won the game. And then we're watching. All of a sudden, my phone rings. I know he's at the game, so I pick it up. I didn't understand a word. It was just screaming. He was just screaming at me, and then he hung up the phone.
That's amazing.
So that was a fun game to watch.
That was awesome.
Odell Beckham had some comments about the Giants. I thought that everything he said was correct. He said nothing wrong. He said things that I was saying. They didn't surround Eli, and he kind of said they didn't help him, but he kind of was more inclinating towards the offensive line.
Yeah, I thought so
they
too.
They didn't help him. I mean, they helped him in terms of getting him Odell and getting him, Saquon Barkley and getting him Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram, but they never addressed the offensive line. He said they went 5-11 all these years in a row, and that really bothered him. And even the year they went 11-5 is because their defense was insane. So I saw a lot on Twitter, Giants fans and really NFL fans that don't like Odell in general saying, oh, now he's humble because his career is kind of like not the same and blah, blah, blah. But, everything he said was correct, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, again, and for whatever reason, a lot of Giants fans, I feel like, hate Odell. They act like he traded himself, whether he requested trade. Again, I never heard anything about that. He clearly wanted to be with the Giants because he signed the contract to play with them.
And he said in that interview that he never wanted to win anywhere else more than he did with the Giants.
I mean, again, like the Giants drafted him. He's not alone in wanting. He felt like he owed it to the Giants. They trusted him to draft him, and he was like, "Shit, I want to win a game here." And again, like you said, everything he said in there was correct. And if anyone denies that, then I think you're kind of dumb as far as your sports takes. Just because he said, hey, we had an old, and he said old, which was good because you had an older Eli Manning. He wasn't the Eli, the older Eli or the younger Eli, I guess we could say. And you had Saquon. Odell basically said, he's like, I proved that I could be really good. And Saquon obviously was really good too after his first year. But you did nothing for the offensive line. Like you absolutely did nothing to help out the offense. You signed Nate Solder to some massive deal. And not once did you ask yourself, wait, why aren't the Patriots who have Tom Brady as quarterback, re-signing this guy if he's that good. And,
Mhm.
and then a lot of people were like, oh, well, he just like kind of wants to come back now, or he sees the Giants are doing good now. Well, it's like that's not true
Yeah.
because the Browns are doing even better.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's so annoying because he got painted with like, oh, I'm a diva, like all this stuff, and then I think he had one of the better kind of PR 180s we've seen since friggin' A-Rod after he
Yeah.
tried suing the MLB. I mean, he just said like, I'm putting my head down when he got to Cleveland, and he's just going to do his thing. Obviously, take away the watch incident, he's never been an issue once for his
Yeah.
team.
I feel bad for him. People love to drag him, and it's because of what his character in New York. He's been painted, as you said, like a diva, when
Yeah.
in recent years in Cleveland, that hasn't really been the case. And when
Mhm.
he got hurt, everybody likes to now say, oh, the Browns have been better without Odell than with Odell. And maybe statistically, in a small sample size, that's true. But people forget the Browns were still like 5-1 when Odell was playing this year.
Yeah, I mean, if
So
Odell's on the field, you're winning games.
I don't understand why Odell gets so much flack. He's never like committed a crime or anything.
Yeah,
He's just a guy. He's just a very flamboyant, like extroverted kind of dude, and that's
yeah.
fine. But
He
I don't
wanted
know.
to win.
I take him back. I don't know. Would you take
Yeah,
him on the Dolphins?
I would
Yeah.
100,000% with the right head coach who can manage that. Manage that again. He's not even really that much of a personality, but
Yeah.
just kind of manage his emotions. Why wouldn't you? I mean, skill set wise, I think he's one of the best wide receivers
When
in the
he's
NFL.
100% healthy, he's top 3 receiver in the NFL.
And honestly, it almost feels like he's getting like buried in Cleveland, whether it be from the media, but then even like just his opportunities or stats that he's putting up. That like I'm waiting for kind of where he goes next to see him
Yeah.
blossom again and show the world what he really is.
Yeah, I think the third time's going to be the charm. I think whatever his third team's going to be, as long as it's the right system, I
Mm-hmm.
think he'll be tremendous. Whether it be a Belichick kind of situation or whoever, I don't know. I think the world of him. I'm glad that we're
Same.
a pro Odell Beckham podcast. That's what I'll say,
Yes, that is
because
definitely for sure.
I don't think it's fair that he gets the slack that he gets from the NFL, and
Mm-hmm.
especially Giants fans. I can't
Yeah.
stand Giants fans that don't like Odell Beckham because
Yeah.
he was the only thing that you cling to in terms of relevance for like 4
Mm-hmm.
years. And as you
100%.
said, it wasn't this ugly divorce that we've seen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of my thought. I saw on Twitter like
I'm
Giants
with
fans
you.
being like, "Oh, who's this guy? Like, why is he talking about the Giants?" Well, first of all, he was
Yeah.
asked, and
Yeah.
two, what he said was right. And if you don't
And
like that, if you don't like what he said, then you should be mad at the Giants for doing what they did for 4 years and not him for saying it.
and then
None of it.
another thing too, the Giants are obviously a very hot team right now, but let's pump the brakes a little bit because they still only have 5 wins.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
it's like, so
That's
that
fair.
again, I wanted to kind of get that across without being just like very condescending and being, oh, like the Giants still suck because they don't. But it's like they've put on a great performance these last 4 weeks, and it's like pump the brakes a little bit because if Odell came knocking on your door, you take him with open arms, and if you
Mhm.
didn't, from a GM perspective, I think you'd be stupid.
Yeah, I think if you ask the majority of Giants fans, they'd be like, "Oh, we don't need them, nor don't need him." And
Mhm.
I think the smarter ones would be like, "Well, I think we do," because let's say the offensive line has improved, obviously, and the defensive line's improved, and everything seems to be good. The one
Mhm.
thing the Giants don't have for Daniel Jones is the Odell Beckham, right? They don't
Mhm.
have that number one receiver that Daniel Jones can turn to on a huge third down when he needs a
Mhm.
conversion, or in the red zone when he needs a touchdown. He doesn't really have that. He has Golden Tate, he has Sterling Shepard, he has
Hot and cold Evan Ingram.
Slayton. I don't like Evan Ingram. I'm done with him.
Mhm.
It's always a drop, it's always a fumble, it's always a tip pass that ends up being picked. But I can go in an hour in that. We don't have that kind of time. But I would
Mhm.
take Odell Beckham back. That's kind of
I
where I'm going. It'll never
I mean,
happen, but
honestly, I don't see why he couldn't because Odell was like vaguely on the trading block. Then obviously he got hurt, and then I think Cleveland's going to be have an interesting situation coming up eventually when they have to pay Baker. I mean, they're already paying Landry like 14 mil. I'm sure Odell's getting that kind of same money, So it's going to be like, all right, well, like we're going to need to free up some money eventually. I mean, we just signed Myles Garrett to a massive deal, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do. And I wouldn't be surprised if Odell gets traded, to be honest. And I also wouldn't be
Yeah,
surprised
I
if
definitely
the
think he's played.
Giants.
I think he's played his last game in Cleveland. I
Mhm,
just think I think financially, I think it makes sense for Cleveland to try to move him
mhm.
because they have been doing good without him. So I think
Yeah,
if they can trade him away and then use that money to, I guess, protect Baker more or ensure that defense, I think that would be a
yeah,
better use of that money. But we'll see.
and yeah, that we will.
So that'll just about do it. Next week, we can have a completely different playoff picture. And we probably will because that's what happened this
Definitely.
week.
Yeah.
Giants, big game against the Cardinals. Dolphins, big game against the Chiefs. Do we have a score prediction?
Dolphins Chiefs. I'm gonna go with 27 to.
The Chiefs didn't look so hot on Sunday night.
I know that is true. I'm gonna give them. I'm gonna give them 27-17.
Okay.
Chiefs winning.
You just want to see a good fight.
Yeah,
That's what
no,
you want to see.
again, I don't want to see some friggin' 40-0 blowout. I
Okay.
obviously you want to see Tua show what he's got a little bit because it's like the Chiefs defense is good, but they're not like the Steelers. And then I'm very very excited to see what this defense, who's been propped up and said that they're really good, what are they going to do against the Chiefs? Because the Broncos, they handled them pretty well, I would say. So let's see what you got.
Would you or would you not be able to survive a Miami Miracle this week against the Chiefs?
Oh, see, I would probably faint. Like there's not a
You'd,
doubt in my mind. I
you'd
would
die.
drop dead. I honestly think I would. Like
I,
not a doubt in my mind.
I would love to see that. Well, I wouldn't want to
Hopefully,
see. I wouldn't want you to die, but like I would love
yeah.
to see a Miami Miracle against Kansas City. Even though I love myself some Chiefs, I think it'd just
Mhm.
be fun if the Dolphins
Hopefully,
somehow.
hopefully we'll give it to you.
Oh my God, that'd be crazy. That'd be insane. But we'll see what happens. For Matt Ferrara, my name is Glen Denegris. We'll see you on the next edition of Ice the Kicker.